Hey, this is Chris Goff with REI Pro, and thanks for joining us. In this training, I want to discuss a strategy that's been around for years and has helped thousands of real estate investors jump into the real estate game. It's called the BRRRR method, which the concept is pretty traditional. You buy a piece of property, you rehab it, you rent it, you refinance it, and you just repeat. Sounds simple, right? But what if you live in a more expensive market or you don't have quite enough cash to actually purchase a property? For most people, they get started wholesaling or another strategy that doesn't require a lot of money. Heck, this is how I got started. Think about it. If you don't have 100% of the cash to buy or at least 20% to put down by getting a loan, repair cost, holding cost, and selling costs, you just can't do this strategy until now. In this training, I'm going to show you how to get started buying properties that will save you thousands of dollars and accomplish the exact same goal as the BRRRR method. I call it the SIR method. Instead of going to the bank and begging for a loan and putting down 20%, I want you to sell or finance the property from the owner, then rehab it, rent it, refinance it, and of course repeat it. And it doesn't matter if the seller has an existing mortgage on the property or not. If they do, we're going to create a new note that wraps around the existing one. When you ultimately refinance it, this will pay off any existing loans the seller has, along with your note with the seller. The seller's bank gets paid off and the seller makes the difference between what you're buying the property for and the seller's loan balance. This is not difficult to do, and I have several training videos on seller financing you should check out in REI Pro, and I have some on YouTube as well. Now remember, as in all real estate transactions, the numbers must work, and you need decent credit to refinance the property. Other than that, this is a surefire way to start building cash flow and equity where you don't have much money invested into it. Your tenants pay down your debt, and eventually you sell, reaping the rewards of investing in real estate. Let's be clear, you'll need some cash to get started, just not as much as the BRRRR method. So let me show you how to do it. In this example, I will use traditional financing versus going through a hard money lender or private investor. After this video, if you're using a hard money or private lender, just go ahead and plug in their cost and make sure the numbers work. Now, let's say you found a property, and again, you guys can change these numbers however you see fit. Okay, this is just an example, and it really doesn't matter. You're going to make the numbers work, and you're going to see the benefits of going this direction with this same BRRRR method. We call it the SIR method. You're going to see the benefits no matter what the example is. Okay, so let's say that the home only needs $25,000 in repairs. You know, it rents for $3,000. Of course, you want to make sure it's going to cash flow. And we negotiate a price of $200,000. Now, a lot of people are going, Bo, how in the heck do you buy a $200,000 house, but it's worth $300,000? Why would the seller ever sell it for that much? Again, we're working with motivated, desperate situations in order to get a good price. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It could be so many reasons, from a divorce, health issues, you name it. Could be a pre-foreclosure issue, okay, where somebody's fallen behind on payments and so forth. So just keep in mind, you could change these numbers however makes sense for whatever deal you're looking at. But the concept that I want to share with you is what's important in this training, okay? So if you were just to traditionally do this method, okay? This is not assuming you go through a hard money lender or private investor. You're going to actually get bank financing, okay? So just keep that in mind. If you do get private money, obviously you could change the numbers according, what is going to be owed on that, or a hard money lender. You just need to add those figures into the example. Now, if I go to the bank, I want to buy this investment property, I'm going to have to put down 20%. Okay. Let's say that I have interest rate is 6%. So my monthly principal interest payment is $959.28. I'm going to ignore taxes and insurance. Just for example purposes, I'm going to leave it out. Points on that, $4,000, 2%. Repairs, of course, we got to put into the property. Holding closing costs, I'm going to put at $5,000. And what that holding time is, this is the time it's going to take for me to rehab this property, put it in a condition that I can actually rent it. I'm going to go 3 months on this property. And of course, I've got to make payments, right? So I've got to make payments during that process before I get the tenant. So if we just totaled this out, and I want to keep this as simple as possible for people. Total out-of-pocket expenses, almost $77,000. So if you think about it, if you don't have $77,000 to buy a $200,000 house, you're just not investing in real estate, right? And this holds so many people back. So many. Trust me, I didn't have money when I got started. I think I had $2,500. That was it. I couldn't go buy real estate this way. So yes, you're going to have some cash. I'm going to show you how to use a lot less cash to accomplish the exact same goal. All right, so generally we're going to refinance this anywhere between 6 to 12 months, okay, just because of the seasoning rules. We're going to refinance that $300,000 ARV, and let's say we get 80% on that. That's going to be a loan of $240,000. Okay, so the previous balance that I had with the owner ends up being $159,000. Okay, now that's after 6 months. As everybody knows, you don't build much equity in a home in the first 12 months. Okay, so most of it's just goes straight to the owner. So we need to pay that off, right? So when the bank gives me the money, I'm going to pay that off. So now my total balance between what we paid the seller off, okay, and what we actually got a new loan for, we're going to actually come out ahead $4,000. And even if you threw some more, expenses in this, let's say you broke even. If you broke even on that deal and you got all your money back, wouldn't you say that's a pretty awesome way to buy real estate? Because now you don't have any money invested into this property. And now we're going to use a tenant to pay off that debt. Hopefully appreciation happens. There's a lot of good things that happen over time. But again, this is an over time type of strategy. All right. So when we talk about the SRRR method, instead of going to the bank and putting down 20%, we're going to seller finance this from the owner. Everything else is going to be identical. Okay. So I'm literally getting the seller to seller finance this property. And just simple terms here, seller financing means the seller's helping the purchaser buy the home. Seller financing refers to a transaction in which the seller of a house provides all or part of the financing. Some sellers will say, hey, I'll finance this much of it, but I need this much down. Okay, so everybody's different. And this is where you get really good at negotiating. Okay, most of the times we're not going to put a tremendous amount of money down on a home that needs work. I always said that, Bo, that I always called that a double down payment. I can't give you a ton of money down and then also put a ton of money into the property, right? So I like to kind of use that with the seller. Now, what happens if the seller has an existing mortgage? It doesn't matter. If they do or don't, it doesn't matter the price point either. Okay, so if there's no mortgage, this is a straight, simple seller finance. If they do have a mortgage, we're going to do what's called a wraparound agreement, and we're going to have what's called that sub-2 clause in it. So you just think of it. I see so many people get so confused on this. Just think of it this way. If the seller has an existing mortgage, it's what people say on YouTube and online as a sub-2. Okay, so the wraparound is the actual agreement that wraps around the existing loan. The sub-2 clause is just subject to any kind of existing financing that's on there, meaning if I stop paying, oh well. Now, of course, I'd lose the house. I would never want to do that, but that's what it is. There's nothing more to it than that. So I see so many people get so confused. Now, is seller finance a sub-2 or what is sub-2? I mean, people are so confused. I hope that just simplified that for you. All right, so let's take this same example. This is the exact same property, $200,000. I'm only going to put down $5,000 because I'm going to go back and say, look, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I can't pay you a ton of money down because I have to put that money into the property. And you also have to think about, this is not a traditional seller, right, Bo? I think a lot of people are like, yeah, but I would never do that. Well, it's because you're not in a desperate situation.
It's all about
you're
motivation.
Not motivated, right? It's a different world out there. If they weren't motivated, they would just put a for sale sign, list it with a realtor, and try to sell this. Maybe they contacted us. Maybe they weren't even thinking of selling. And we sent them some direct mail. And next thing you know, they call. Okay. Some people they're not even thinking about selling, Bo, until you send them material to say, hey, I'm looking to buy.
And how many times have we had that happen?
Oh my gosh. And now all of a sudden people are going, maybe I do need to get rid of that house. I've been worried about that house. It needs work. I don't have any money to fix up the home. And if I can't fix up the home, I can't even rent the home because I have no money to do any of that. It could be something that simple. But anytime I do this, of course, I want to put the least amount down as possible. Could you do zero down? Sure. But they'd have to be really, really desperate. Most people want some type of cash commitment, right? And legally, you got to put down at least $10 in most states. So just to fulfill that agreement. So I'm going to negotiate a $5,000. Here's the great thing. When you negotiate and making offers, you can always go up, but you can't go down once you say it, right? So even if the seller came back saying, no, 5,000, no, I really need 10,000. Okay, then that's up to you. Okay, if that works for you, then you could do that. So keep in mind, you could change these numbers up. Now, a lot of people may be surprised. We could generally get a better interest rate if I, as the investor, seller finance my house. Yeah, I'm going to move that interest rate up here. But me as the investor buying your home, I'm going to set that interest rate down. Okay. A lot of people don't even know that. Like, you generally can get a better deal. Okay. So I'm going to negotiate that 5% interest rate, the monthly principal interest payment. If you amortize this, great thing. We go into REI Pro, we go to a mortgage calculator, we can run these numbers. Okay. Again, we still have repairs. We're going to have holding costs. I'm going to keep these numbers identical here. Payments for 3 months here. Again, that's going to be a little bit different just because of the balance there. So, but out-of-pocket expenses is really what I want you to focus on. Okay, so that's $38,000. Now, that's a lot less. So we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to go to the bank. Remember, you have to have credit enough to refinance this unless you go through a private lender that wants to do the whole thing. Okay, so 80%, 240, that's identical. So the previous loan balance with the owner, because we didn't put as much down, we do have a higher loan balance of 193, but we're still in the plus numbers when you subtract that. So we're going to be, with cash back at closing, I think it was the third house I bought when we actually started rehabbing, Bo. We got a check back for, I can't remember how much it was. It didn't matter. We got money back, right? Because we kind of overfinanced it a little bit. Those are the best closings when you get cash back. You buy a house and you take money home, right? Yeah, it's debt, but I like it because, well, I'm going to give you some tips here. So if you just look at the difference just in the savings here, I mean, what's that? Almost $39,000 difference. This could be a huge game changer for a lot of people, because if you don't have $76,000 or access to $76,000, you're just not going to do the deal. And that's why I want you to go to the seller about seller financing this deal, because seller financing it's going to require less money out of pocket. You can generally negotiate a better deal. And keep this in mind, we're cashing the seller out in 6 months. It's not like we're cashing them out in 5 years. Generally we do seller finance and we'll put a balloon payment somewhere 3, 5, 10 years, somewhere around there, where we have to pay the balance off. So this is a very short-term deal for the seller and works great for people, like I said, are going to be in that position that says, look, I can't sell. I need to sell. I'm in a desperate situation. You're giving them payments each month right now, and you're paying the taxes and insurance. I didn't include that in the example, but just keep that in mind. You'll have that. But my point is this. Just the difference in these two savings is huge.
I mean, based
And
on those numbers, you can do about two of these at the same time.
well, think about if you're in an expensive market, instead of getting a $300,000 house, you get a $800,000 house. These numbers are still going to work out in your favor. People don't understand, you could buy expensive property without putting $100,000, $200,000 down on these things, right? Now, the problem with more expensive property is you got to make sure that it cash flows, right? Because if your mortgage payment's here, you got to make sure that that cash flow, that rent value is going to be there for you. So I think there's that bread and butter, and like we always say, Bo, kind of target what we call that middle of the road. And that's that median home price of where you live are really ideal properties. It's the majority in most areas, wherever that median price is, that's really going to be your ideal target market is going to be there. So let me keep going with this, but I just want to give you just a few tips here. Okay. Number one, you have to find a seller willing to take payments. Okay. And again, keep in mind, this is going to be short term. So I personally would start marketing vacant, absentee owners anywhere in your area, but you could do this out of your area as well. Okay. So obviously you can pull that list up in REI Pro. You can use our direct mail engine, and you can do all of your marketing right there. Now, although you're going to refinance this in 6 months, I want you to give more time with the seller. Don't say 6 months, because what happens if something comes up? What happens if something gets delayed? So I would shoot for like a 12-month term, but keep in mind, you can cash them out any day before 12 months. You could do it tomorrow. Okay, but you would have up till 12 months to actually refinance that. So try to get 12 months. Obviously, the sooner the better, because you're going to have to make those payments to the seller until you refinance it. And that could obviously eat into some profits. Obviously, run comps. This is kind of a big one. So important. I couldn't tell you how many times I think I've done a video or training on how to run comparable sales, and I still see people just doing it wrong. And, that's what I love. Obviously, we have comps in REI Pro in all 50 states, county, and MLS. And, let's say you're in Texas, right? So Texas is a non-disclosure state, and they can't publish any sold data on a public website, such as a Zillow. So you have to call a realtor and say, hey, can you get a comp, get a comp, get a comp, give me a comp. Eventually that realtor is going to change their phone number because they're sick and tired of, and then you have some people go, well, I think I'm going to get my real estate license and hang my license with a broker over here so I can have access to the MLS. And some people go that route. Great thing, with obviously REI Pro, we have access to those non-disclosure states, all MLS sales. Most important thing when you run comps, the very first thing you have to look at is the square footage of the property. Is it similar to yours? You can't, if your property is 2,500 square feet, you can't take a $1,200 square foot home that sold. It's not comparable. And a lot of people don't know with comps, just think of your street for a second. If you're in a single family home, but it doesn't matter. But let's say you are. There's always a big home. There's always the small home on the same street, right? This home's a little bit bigger. This one's a little bit smaller. And in real estate, what we do is we go based on averages. And it's the average cost per square foot sold, right? Not what somebody's asking for the property, not what's pending, what actually has sold. It doesn't matter what people ask for a house. It's what's sold. So if a small home, square footage wise, sells, the cost per square foot is going to be higher than the cost per square foot sold on a bigger home. I want you to look at it as the bigger home generally increases the value of the small home, while the small home decreases the value of the big home to find that happy middle. Now, I'm not talking about amenities and, this has got an in-ground pool and that one's got fenced in yard and granite countertops and all that good stuff. Of course, that's going to increase value. But the very first thing I want to look at is the square footage similar to my property. Okay. I was working with one of my students, Bo, last week, and the owner, goes to Zillow and says, hey, they estimate this value there. This house, is valued there. But the problem is the seller in Texas doesn't have a clue what it actually sold for unless they have access to the MLS. They have no idea. Right. So Zillow is just going to give that roundabout estimated value. Okay. So it's so important that you have to make sure that these numbers are right. Now, I'm not talking like to the penny, right? What I'm talking about is like, you don't want to be 30 grand off. That's going to eat up everything. Okay. No major rehabs unless it's a great deal. If you're just getting started, I always say, try to find the properties that just need a little bit of lipstick. People don't really realize how difficult it is to rehab property. People, even if you watch any show on TV, they always screw something up. And these are people who have been doing it for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is very difficult to get started rehabbing. So try to find properties that, don't need major overhauls. Now, if the numbers are fantastic, go for it, because you have room to make errors, right? And it's not even that, Bo, it's the length of time that it could take to actually rehab the house, especially if you don't know what you're doing. I was in Pittsburgh working with one of my students, and we went and looked at a property that was purchased through a tax sale. Okay, this is a nice home. Man, it sat right on a hill. We had to go like up 30 steps to get up to the front door, by the way. This home was purchased by an investor. It was her first property. And guess what happened? They ran out of money. And now they're desperate to sell, and they're the investor. Sometimes you know how it is, Bo. Next thing you know, we run into like, we didn't see that. Who saw that?
The foundation problem.
The more you do it, the better you get at it. But there's still always that unforeseen expense somewhere. And that's why you try to find properties that don't need a ton of work, especially if you're getting started. Okay. Next one, start marketing for tenants during the rehab. Don't wait till it's done. Throw a sign out there. And I can tell you the rental market's actually going to start going up. So this is actually a great time to get into this. And especially if interest rates keep rising, which they will, right? It's going to slow down the marketplace, right? This always goes back to supply and demand. It's a very basic concept. As inventory increases, prices come down. That's the whole point of increasing the interest rate, right? What's going to happen? Simple. People should be getting into real estate right now. It's happening right in front of you. This whole, everybody knows it. You got inflation going on at the exact same time. You are going to find more motivated sellers through the end of this year and all of next year, and maybe even the year after. And I know, Bo, we're going to do a pre-foreclosure update here soon as well, because we have the data to actually back it up.
Yep. And those numbers are ticking up.
We kind of see what, we know what's going to happen. Okay. So as you find more motivated sellers, which is a great time to be in right now, this could be a great tool in your toolbox. It's not like you're asking the seller to wait forever. And then as you start rehabbing this property, throw a red sign, coming soon. Get that. You want a line of tenants ready to go. Okay.
It's funny, Chris. I've been doing some rehabs, and when people start coming over, they start seeing themselves living there, owning that home. Then they start talking about what they could do with it, or this paint color. What are you going to do with that for? They start giving you all kind of stuff. They start getting invested mentally. So it's not a bad thing to go ahead and get them in early.
Absolutely. Obviously, you're going to have them in there before the refinance anyways, right? So that's going to be the next thing you need to get prepared for. So if it's your first time You need to start reaching out to lenders early. Don't wait till the last minute. You need to start building those relationships right away when you do this. Okay. Obviously, if you've been doing it before, refinancing, you may already have those relationships, but the people just getting started, don't wait till the last minute. If you keep waiting too long, all it's doing is you're just burning a hole in your pocket. Expenses happen every single day on a house. I don't care if it's taxes, insurance, mortgage payment, whatever it may be, utilities are on, you're going to have expenses. So you want to make this happen as quickly as possible. Not only get the tenant in there as quickly as possible, get that refinance right at that seasoning. 6 months, most banks will do 6 months. Some banks may be a little bit longer. Obviously, you need to find that out prior to. So again, very important to get that refinance. I know people that go talk to banks before they actually do a deal. I know that sounds kind of, a little early. It's never too early to go start building relationships with bankers. It could be the bank you bank at currently, right? It could be a small local bank. I can tell you the banks are being very aggressive. And I want you to think about this for a second. If interest rates are going up, people are not buying as much. The inventory levels go up. Inventory levels go up, prices drop. Banks have to loan money. That's how they make money. They have to be liquid. They make money by loaning you and me money, right? And think about the seller at the same time. If they're acting as a bank, they're making interest on this property. So I didn't calculate the interest they would have made in a short period of time, a few $1,000, but they're getting a little bit more just in interest. So it's not like they're just getting, the 200 here. And again, you got to run the numbers on no matter what you do. But that's really what I wanted to cover tonight, is to actually show you the numbers. I want you to dig more into the seller finance strategy if you're not aware of it, and just ask the seller, hey, would you be willing to take payment short term? Okay, so it's a great strategy to have in your toolbox, especially if you're an investor that's looking to build long term. I mean, think about that. The money you get back at closing, I mean, that's tax free because you don't pay taxes on borrowed money, right? You take that money and you go invest it into another property because the only purpose of money is to make more money, right? So you got to keep buying those assets to keep producing that income. So I want to take some questions, Bo. You see my cup?
Judge Judy.
See if you can read it.
It's not an answer.
Not an answer. You ever watch Judge Judy? Oh, I love Judge Judy.
First one we had right off the bat, not pertaining to the subject matter, Paul, I want to know if REI Pro will ever include a website or a squeeze page as part of the system.
We don't have plans just because there's so many people that are so good at it. I could tell you one of my favorite places to go.
What's that?
This is all you need, technically, is lead pages. Okay, so leadpages.com, and super affordable, super simple. So if you're not that techie, you need to get some type of landing page. They even have websites as well. Yeah. It is so simple to get that up. You could use Zapier to tie it into REI Pro. It's a very good place. A lot of people use GoDaddy even to have these sites. A lot of people use Carrot as well, which we have a direct integration into REI Pro.
Yeah, that was something somebody was just asking. Speaking of landing pages, what our thoughts are on Carrot. Yeah, Dana. Years and years ago, we worked with them to get a direct integration with their system because they do websites really well. They got the content marketing there for you as well. And so instead of hopping through a Zappy or something like that, we just built the direct integration. It was a win-win for both of us. As far as we had a couple people asking, Chris, what is a squeeze page? And how does that differ from a website?
I always say so I always say a website talks about everything you do.
Yeah, your whole
You have an
company
about
branding.
us page. You whatever you do, you talk about that, right? Where a landing page, just think of it as a one-page website. There's no links to go from this page to that page. And generally, it's really focused on one specific thing.
Well, good example, Chris, when they had to register for tonight's
Yeah.
webinar, that's a squeeze page. That's not REI Pro's main website. That's not Chris Goff's personal website. It was a squeeze page to get signed up.
Yeah, squeeze
for the
page,
webinar.
landing page, I say they're the same thing. Experienced investors should be doing is you would have multiple of those landing pages, squeeze pages. You could have one page dedicated just for pre-foreclosures. You could have one just dedicated for divorce. You could have one dedicated for just general, you buy houses. You go through every specific scenario of a situation that a seller goes through. You could technically build multiple of these pages. That way, when you're doing online advertising, you direct people straight to a page of what they're looking for. A lot of times, if I always say you should have what I call a branding website, and that kind of tells a little bit about everything, who you are, what you do, tips, tricks, blah, 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 a lot of stuff that goes on. So like if you go to my website, chrisgoffrealestate.com, you're going to see multiple pages on there, just a little bit of everything, right? Where you kind of have to have that, but the landing page is very specific to if I'm behind on payments, as an example, because you could do this with pre-foreclosures. The only thing you got to add in some of the back payment amounts and stuff like that. I'm going to build that page on pre-foreclosures, and a seller that is behind on payments. And a lot of times they start Googling this stuff before they even actually go into pre-foreclosure because they already know they're not going to make the payment, right? So they start researching what happens to people in this. And that's where you could run some Google AdWords. And when they click that link, because that's a very specific thing that they're looking for, it goes to what is your landing page. And that's all it talks about. It's that one thing. You're more likely to have somebody contact you or fill out a form than if they went to your branding site. Because if they go to the branding site, you know what they do? They start clicking on other stuff you do. And then they forget, right? And then they venture off somewhere else. But this is so specific on one thing.
Yeah,
So,
and we can't get too deep into marketing, but when you're paying for ads like pay-per-click and Google, everything has to line up to get the best quality score, which gets the best price that you're going to pay per click, or even if they're even going to show your ad. So you got to be very particular to where you send people. So
yeah, you should always at least attend a couple of local, even if you haven't done anything in real estate, you just kind of go just to see what it's all about. You definitely want to go, okay? Because you'll meet somebody, you'll start talking to someone. Next thing you know, you've got 5 people. You're going to say, hey, yeah, I buy houses in the area. I'm looking for, properties in this general area. If you find one, let me know. So the relationships will be key. Don't feel, and I thought this when I got started, I was like, I ain't telling nobody what I'm doing. Nobody's going to know. And, unfortunately, it takes people, all right, to do things. So go out there and start networking with people. You can find a local meetup club pretty much anywhere. Of course, National REIA has, I don't know how many, but you can go to the National REIA
hundreds
website and see if there's one local to you as well. But there are so many out there. I think it doesn't matter the size of the group. It's just going and seeing what it's all about. You'll learn a lot. Education is never going to end.
Yep.
We're all still learning. No matter how long we've been in this business, there's things always changing.
Yep.
So, you get better at it.
Just like Nicole saying, meetup.com. She put it out there for everybody.
Absolutely. There'll be a lot of meetups across the country.
Jasmine's got a couple of questions. What percent equity are you requiring for these deals?
I think it's a personal question. Here's my main goal. Let me go back a couple of slides because I want to show. Do you see this loan balance plus out of pocket? The home run deal is when you get all your money back. Now, would you like to still have more equity? Absolutely. Absolutely. But what happens if maybe this number was in the red, 8,000? Is that still a good deal? I could say, yeah, I bought this house and I only owe 8,000. I'm buying this on credit, right? So I'm using somebody else's money. I still say that's a good deal. That's going to reflect the amount of equity in the property. So this is probably one of the best tips that I could give anybody out there to logically understand how these strategies and valuations come down to it. I always say I will never buy a property where I have to pay in one lump sum, either bank, private money, hard money, in one lump sum. I would never pay more than 65% of the ARV. That's a general guideline. So if I'm wholesaling, and I know we're getting off, but this is going to make sense. If I'm wholesaling, I have to pay the seller in one lump sum. If I'm a rehabber, I have to pay the seller in one lump sum, unless you seller finance those rehabs, which we're doing here. That offer number is always the lowest. I can pay the seller a little bit more on the sales price if I seller finance it, because I'm buying it on terms. And when I can get terms, I can make the numbers work in my favor. The highest offer on sales price would be a lease option, because I could pay full price on a lease option and still make money. Okay, so when I logically put these strategies in order, I know if I pay the seller in one lump sum, that's going to be my lowest offer. Generally, it's going to have the highest equity in it. I could pay a little bit more on the seller finance because I'm buying it over time. I'll make my money over time. Same thing as a lease option. So when you think about, we talk about making multiple offers all the time. I can tell you with our new updates that are coming out in REI Pro, we actually added a whole new offer system, which is a pre-foreclosure offer that we're adding. We're a firm believer of making multiple offers. This could be just one offer to the seller. If I paid cash, it may be less than 200. And that's when you make multiple offers, your acceptance ratio increases already, because you are giving the seller options. And when you give them an option like this, nobody's making that offer. Investors don't do that, right? Not some do. Most investors would never do that because they're just not trained to do that. And that's why I wanted to get these numbers out to you. Yeah, you got to learn some seller financing. But so when I look at equity, and I know that's a long roundabout way of answering this question, the numbers have to work. If I know that I'm going to take 6 months to rehab this home, my numbers I have to have more equity because I'm putting more time into it. If it's something that I can flip real quick or do super fast, maybe I don't need as much equity. So I go back to saying, I think it's a very personal question. What are you willing to make out of this deal for the time, effort, and energy and marketing it took for you to get the deal? You know, when I first got started, man, if I made $3,000, whoo, let's have a party. You know, now $3,000, I may not even be worth my time. So, you know, time is money, right? So I think you got to look at it from that point of view. Again, it's personal. But, you know, if you're just getting started, because we always have, you know, everybody starts somewhere. We got started with somewhere, right? And just go do the deal. I don't care if you make $1, because you're going to do something way more valuable. And that is going to prove to yourself that you can do this. And the flip side is it's real. Mm-hmm. This isn't a bunch of YouTube videos and trainings to get people to buy stuff. This is actually a real business. And, you know, I've been in it for a long time. 1999, I quit my job to do it. So if you're just getting started, learn as much as you can. We have tons of training videos that you can access. We have some on YouTube as well. We also have a ton in our education center in REI Pro. So
For REI Pro anyway, want to know, could we add land, or when searching properties by the map, have lot boundaries that will show all the properties and be able to kind of click on the properties next to them like you do on a county GIS? Jasmine might be new. All of what you just asked for is in REI Pro.
Yep. You want to
can
go to
go to-
Lead Pro.
Go to Lead Pro, search, you start out a search, say absentee owner in your county, zip code, city. You will come up with a map. You zoom into that map, you'll get lot lines. You can click on those. You can draw on the map to hone a certain area. You can turn on neighborhoods, school systems. You can turn all that stuff on right there inside of it. Steven's asking, what are the seasoning rules for refinancing? He's never heard of seasoning rules.
Yeah, generally a bank won't put a loan on a property generally that you just bought until 6 to 12 months that you've owned it. So it wasn't always like that, but it's kind of the general rule of thumb right now. Is this whole foreclosure thing that happened back in 05, 06, 07, and just seemed like it continued, really changed a lot of rules. And what people were doing is they refinance, pull the cash out, and then go through foreclosure and take the cash and run. That's what they did.
Yep.
So they got all their equity out. So because nobody was buying like that, like a typical buyer wasn't going to go buy. So, I mean, I knew attorneys that literally this one attorney, the house across the street was going into foreclosure and had a ton of equity in it. And he went across the street, bought the house across the street, had like a couple $100,000 of equity in it. And he let his house go into foreclosure.
Got set up before the foreclosure.
He said, what do I need credit for? I've got a couple $100,000 to get me by for the next 7 years. It's what people did. They, they were just walking away.
Yep.
Now there's new rules. So there's new rules for certain things. Most banks will go anywhere from 6 to 12 months, generally speaking.
Stephanie, when you buy the house, do you buy it in an LLC or in your name? Which I think we kind of answered that. We can do a little bit more detail on that. But if you do buy it in the LLC, will the bank let you refinance with the property in that said LLC?
Keep in mind, a LLC is not a living human being. It can't actually pay the bank back. That's why there's people involved. So again, having decent credit and all that stuff, again, depending on the relationship you also have with your bank. I mean, that
it depends on how many you've done. Yes, some banks might loan you straight to the LLC if you've got longevity history and time of doing it. If not, they're going to require that personal guarantee for sure. Even if they put it in the LLC, they're going to require you to personally guarantee it. Let's see, Jasmine, with your offers, talking about offers, would those offers be letters of intent or offers? I'm not sure if it's state by state.
To me, it's the exact same thing.
Yeah, you're making an offer. Here it is. I'm willing to pay this. Once you agree upon this said offer that you're doing, then you sign a contract and there you go.
Most times when you make the offer, it's just verbal, right? And that's when you quickly get the contract ready to go. Now, I will say with seller financing, you do want an attorney to draw up those seller finance agreements because they're going to have to reprint the deed anyway. So I like to find an attorney that also does closings. Right. So there's always an attorney at a title company, but I like to work with, because attorneys that do closings understand creative financing.
Right.
More than a title company, because title company, 99.9% of the closings that happen at a title company have a seller, a buyer, a bank, and a realtor. So whereas a closing attorney understands more of the contract law side of it and understands it more of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So try to find one in your local area. Not all attorneys, not all real estate attorneys will be that good at this part. And you need to find, and we go back to, we said, hey, go to a meetup club, go to, a REIA club. That's who you ask for attorneys. Hey, what attorneys do people use around here that understands more of the creative financing? Oh, it's Bob so-and-so or Jackie so-and-so.
Yep.
That's a great resource for you guys. That's why it's so important to go out there and network. You can build your entire power team by doing that.
John, what would your discount goal be on a property that just needs lipstick?
Again, I think it goes back to that personal. If it just needs lipstick and I can flip this property within, let's say 30 days or start making income on it in 30 days, is my profit based on selling it quickly, or is my profit going to be more based on holding it long term? Because if I hold on to it long term, I have a chance to make up some maybe loss in my offer. Maybe I paid a little bit more for it, but I'm going to make up for that over time. Or do I need cash today and say, if I'm going to buy this property and turn it in 30 days, sell it? That's what I mean. Sell the property. I need to say, okay, how much potential profit do I have on this deal? Is that worth me buying it? And I think that's personal for everyone. Some people might say, hey, 10 grand, I'm happy. Some people say, Chris, I don't even do a deal unless I make a minimum 25 grand. So I think everybody's a little bit different. Again, time is the key, guys. Focus on how long is this going to take to rehab this property.
We've had a number of people just in general going, hey, do you want to talk about the new updates that are coming and when are they coming?
We are working extremely hard. I can tell you, it is bad to the bone. Oh my gosh. Just even if you look at the entire, I don't know if you guys been with us. We've had users on this for years. And a lot of people always hear me talk about these executable steps. It's the physical things you have to do from start to finish in order to close the deal. It doesn't matter if you're wholesaling, retailing, lease option, seller finance, doesn't matter, right? We're going back to how we used to do the steps, where when you go through a step, you can mark it complete. And we'll have a tracker on your properties section. You could literally say, I want to see all the properties that I've contacted the owner, but I haven't gone further than that. That whole system we're implementing is going to so simplify this business for people. A lot of people, always told Bo from the beginning, there's so many people that talk about real estate, but not a lot of people can teach it. We took the teaching side of it when we built it, because we're actually teaching somebody the business by just fundamentally going through the system. And we're simplifying that process. Through that process, we're coming up with all kinds of improvements that our users have noted to us, saying, man, we'd really like this, we'd like that. So we're taking your advice and making it better for everybody. I personally went through, I don't know how many, 2 or 3 pages just over the last 18 months. And I go through and say, yeah, we could do that. We could do that. Okay. I could see that that's going to work for everyone. Some were very personal. Like it would be a big deal to that one person, right?
Right. And it's hard to customize the system for that one person. But
Yeah.
generally, if somebody's making suggestions that we take a step back and look at it and go, I don't even know why we didn't think about that, but that is a great suggestion that would help benefit everybody. Those types of suggestions, they get worked in there.
Yeah, the big thing we wanted to put in this update is analytics. And we're bringing a whole new suite of analytics for all the properties. That in itself is a huge, huge improvement. When you go to a property, when we get this out to you guys, you're going to see that all in the forefront. You're going to know so much about that property just by looking at the analytics of the property. So we went back and supercharged our analytics side. Just even me going through kind of our testing and stuff like that, it's so much easier. God, there's so many cool things that we're putting into these particular steps that is just going to make your job easier, but it's going to simplify how you do this business. And I think that's the hardest thing because I always tell people, Bo, you could go learn whatever you want to learn, but if you don't know what to do next, it's never going to happen. That is the biggest question I've got teaching this business for the last 20 years. Yeah, but now what? Okay, I did that, but now what? How do you do that? That experience of being in the business and the teaching side and simplifying how we design and program stuff. And I can't wait. I hope you learned something valuable, and be sure to subscribe and smash that like button. We're just trying to inspire people to get out and start investing in real estate. And I'll see you on the next training video.
Thanks for listening to REI Pro Talk. If you've ever wanted to jump into the real estate game, get started with the #1 software for real estate investors on the planet, REI Pro. Start for free at www.myreipro.com.